Okay, untap, upkeep, drop.
This is Interplanar Public Radio. IPPR. Bloop, 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 bloop. You're listening to All Cards Considered. I'm Jesse Batend.
And I'm Dylan Cassidy.
And today we're heading into the wilds of Eldraine to meet all of the strange fairy tale creatures.
Yep, there's just a bunch of little weirdos waiting for us in the wilds of Eldraine.
Tons of little weirdos. And we're digging into the signposts, talking about the archetypes, and talking about some of the returning mechanics, of course, because we've been to Eldraine before.
Yeah, we've been there, done that.
Let's talk a little bit about the original Eldraine as a setup. What are some things that you remember that stick out, good and bad?
Well, I remember adventures as a mechanic are just incredibly powerful. I mean, any sort of choose card is usually good to have options, and these are like get a sorcery or a spell and also always get a creature, which is great. So adventure is a very good mechanic.
Yeah, long-standing rule of Magic that they can get two things for one thing. That's always going to be good, and this set's really doubling down on that.
Yeah.
Lots of cards give you things for things. One of the things that you often get in Eldraine is food.
Yeah.
So it's back again.
We love food.
We're coming hot off the heels of a lot of food with Lord of the Rings, so we're getting fat on it. But food in Lord of the Rings was a little bit more combative.
Yeah.
Of course, food is a token you could sacrifice, gain 3 life. Eldraine offered more of like a mid-range kind of grind sacrifice gameplay previously. So it'll be curious to see if how they differentiate it from food in the past.
Eldraine was my first set as an adult Magic player.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Interesting.
Came back to it when they released Arena, and I think Eldraine was the first full set release they had on Arena. So I have a lot of memories of that. What are the standout cards that I think still are like in rotation are going to be Murderous Rider, right? That still sees play in some formats. I know it's a cube staple.
Sure.
It's the murder spell that also has the creature attached to it, and then when he dies, you put it back into your library.
Yeah.
Oko, of
Bone
course.
Crusher Giant.
Bone Crusher
was
Giant.
Extremely powerful.
Basically, the whole cycle of rare adventure cards. Brazen Borrower. Beasts.
Lovestruck Beast.
Lovestruck Beast.
This is a great flavor card.
Let's finish it out. The white one is it Realm Cloak Giant? But there's Oko, and then there's the other card that got banned really early, which was Once Upon a Time.
Did Lucky Clover also get banned? The one that lets you double adventures? I think that might have gotten like restricted or banned in some formats as well.
Yeah.
Point being, it was like a controversial set that caused some problems in terms of bans. For Magic and how they handled bans in the community, but it was a very synergistic set. And that seems to carry over again this time. You're going to be doing a lot with a little. As far as like one of the things I remember from Eldraine that I just always loved. I mean, I know it got on some people's nerves, but have you ever played with like the cat oven combo? A constructed deck?
Yeah, well, that's Eldraine 2, isn't it?
That was Eldraine 2. And it's just, it was just such a
set apart.
Fun matching of theme and gameplay. Like, nailed it on every level, even if some people would say it was too powerful, stuck around for a little too long. But yeah, fueled a whole bunch of different like Golgari food decks. Of course, the third thing that's returning besides adventures is sagas. There was a lot of sagas in Eldraine previously, and the return of adventures this time, it seems not all of the adventures, but a lot of the adventures are a different color.
Okay.
So similar to what we saw in Dominaria Reunited, with off-color kicker, you've got off-color adventures. So we actually have 2 uncommon signposts for each archetype.
Oh, cool.
We've also got 3 new mechanics, and I want to cover them quickly because they relate to how you're going to assess these cards. So the first one is rolls, and there's kind of like a lot to digest here.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different... I only know cursorily from reading like some of the spoilers about this, but... Rolls are auras you attach to things.
Yeah, exactly. You usually get them by casting a creature, and they're an aura that you can attach to another creature. Now, importantly, they can only have one role. You can't be both a monster and a young hero.
Okay.
So
there must at least be a monster, a young hero.
So they do very disparate things. There's cursed, monster, royal, sorcerer, wicked, young hero, and virtuous, which only is going to appear in Commander. Cursed makes an enchanted creature into a 1/1. So this is sort of an almost kill spell. It's going to be very powerful. Monster makes an enchanted creature get +1/+1 and trample, so bigger and stompy.
So that's the green one.
Yeah. Royal gives a creature +1/+1 and ward 1, so it gets bodyguards.
Do we think that's the white one?
I think that's probably going to show up a lot in like white and black. I wouldn't be surprised. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if all of these end up showing up kind of across the board. Yeah. Then Sorcerer is +1/+1, and whenever this creature attacks, scry 1. Wicked enchanted creature gets +1/+1, and when this aura is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life. So it takes a little something with it. And then Young Hero, the one that I think might be the most powerful. I mean, Cursed is going to have the most utility, but Young Hero seems like it might be the most powerful. Enchanted creature has, whenever this creature attacks, if its toughness is 3 or less, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So obviously that's going to work really well with flyers, 1/1 flyers, 2/2 flyers, that sort of thing. But I would keep an eye out for how many cheap 3/1s can you get, because a 6/3 for like next to nothing seems pretty nice. Seems like a great way to run away with a game.
Yeah.
It's weird that it caps like that, because I mean they're going to kill your Young Hero whenever they get the chance.
Yeah.
Otherwise, but yeah, in a situation where you have 2 3/3s, it does nothing. So that's something to keep in mind. Those are the roles, and they're enchantments. In general, this set has a big focus on enchantments, and so that's what I was kind of hinting at with the 2-for-1. You're going to get an enchantment with your creatures sometimes. You're going to get a sorcery or an instant with your creatures. There's all sorts of value floating around. Value on top of value. The off-color payoffs thing already powers down adventures quite a bit, right? Because there's going to be situations where you play a creature just because it's on color and you can't cast its adventure. And I could potentially, depending on how powerful the adventures are, see doing the opposite. Yeah. Where you throw it in just because it's a good instant. So something to keep in mind as we evaluate these cards.
Yeah, figure out how splashy this set is too.
Exactly, yeah. The next one is Bargain, which is very similar to Kicker. You just get an extra bonus effect if you sack a artifact, enchantment, or token. So here's where you can get rid of those rolls, snatch away the title of monster from one of your creatures in order to make a bigger explosion or something like that. And then we've got Celebration, which is really simple. If 2 or more enchantments enter the battlefield this turn, something happens.
So kind of like Constellation a little bit from Theros.
Or I think it was like, not Party, but Capenna had a similar thing.
Oh, yeah.
But these are permanent, so it does work with food and artifacts and enchantments and rolls and all of those other things. So a creature that targets a roll, there you go, you trigger something right there. So yeah, those are the 3 new mechanics. It seems pretty straightforward. Like, they're all very light on power. And again, the synergy is going to be where it's all at.
The rolls seem interesting.
Rolls seem very interesting, and obviously the other 2 like play off of them really well. So we'll see how much you can cross themes when you're actually building a deck, but it seems like you'll at least have multiple directions to go during a draft. So that's cool. So yeah, the other fun thing is that each of the archetypes, at least according to Wizards, is based on a fairy tale.
Oh, fun.
Whether that's a real world fairy tale of ours, there seem to be some nods to those, but some of them are just based on like a legend within the world of Eldraine. And
a legend within the world of Eldraine. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, apparently while you're building, they had draft in mind while they were doing this. Like while you're building your deck, based on the adventures and the creatures, you'll sort of be able to kind of piece together the legend and get a sense of like who your little fairy tale tribe was or is doing. So let's see how much we can piece together from just the signpost uncommons. We'll be quizzing you, Dylan, at the end of each little one to see can you guess what the idea is here. So first up is going to be Gruul, and it cares about 4+ power creatures. That's the archetype.
That's a common theme for Gruul.
Very common theme for Gruul. And the first one is this little guy that I absolutely love. His name is Picnic Ruiner. He's a 1 and a red for a goblin rogue. And if you want to pay 3 and a green, you can, at sorcery speed, send him on an adventure and distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. He'll go off and get some stolen goods. That's the name of his sorcery. But he himself...
Stolen goodies,
excuse me. Yeah. He himself is a 2/2, And whenever he attacks while you control a creature with power 4 or greater, Picnic Ruiner gains double strike until end of turn.
It's pretty sweet.
So the adventure enables the other side. I mean, this seems great to me, a value 2-drop that gets better in the late game.
Yeah.
I think you'll absolutely slam it.
So I don't know what the tricks are in this set. And to get the double strike, you would have to use your trick before you go to attacks, which is kind of like a little bit so-so. But if you're using that to close out a game for 8 damage, that's not a bad place to be.
Yeah, being on theme. And, I mean, he turns a 1/1 into a 4/4 with his adventure.
Yeah.
So for 6 mana, you can get a double striking 2/2 and turn a 1/1 into a 4/4 or, you know, distribute them
See how
however
one
you
side
want.
works with the other.
It's a very like conditional but powerful ability. So that's what I'm excited about with this is when you have the opportunity to pull it off, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
But you don't have to waste a whole card slot on it. Otherwise, because a 2/2 that can conditionally have double strike is always going to be fine.
Hard to give this like a rating in my mind yet, since I don't know what the rest of the cards look like. So I'm going to say this is just middle of the pack for now.
I'm pretty excited about it. I think it's just pretty solid.
The creature seems fine, but the sorcery seems overcosted. But that's usually how adventures go.
Yeah, fair enough. So next up we have Ruby Daring Tracker, and she's also a 2 mana. She's red and a green for a 1/2 human scout with haste. Whenever Ruby Daring Tracker attacks while you control a creature with power 4 or greater, Ruby gets +2/+2 until end of turn. You can also tap her to add either red or green.
Interesting.
Okay, a hasty mana dork at 2 is intriguing
Yeah, that's not a bad
because
thing.
she can just tap right away.
And she is not a wasted slot in a deck later on, because assuming you have another creature with 4 power or more, she's now a 3/4 with haste, which is definitely pretty good.
I mean, drop her on turn 2 and like get an attack in, and then maybe on turn 3 play a 4-drop, and now she's attacking as a 3/4 for 2 mana.
Yeah. I
Seems
think
all right.
This set, so my thought looking at Gruul here right now is going to come down to what is the like first 4 power creatures you start having access to, and how good.
How often are you really going to be able to play those? Exactly. My guess is that you're probably, I wouldn't be surprised if the general power level of the set is a little bit lower, especially with all those +1/+1 counters rolling around. So you're probably going to need to rely on rolls a little bit to get there.
Okay.
And, you know, Monster's going to be your friend.
Right.
+1/+1 and trample on a creature that's already potentially conditionally getting bigger and moving the whole team. What I was going to say is that the fact that rolls prevent you from stacking them on your biggest creature seems like it's going to reward going wide in general anyway.
Yeah.
So I like the idea of cheap creatures that get bigger and better, you know, for,
while you
for
have
no
more of
extra
them.
mana even. Usually I feel like that's an ability you kind of have to pay mana for. So
Yeah.
she's just like, yeah, if you let me live, I'll do for you.
In the late game is a 3/4 for 2 mana with haste.
Yeah.
That seems pretty
That
decent.
seems okay.
Yeah. And just playing her early on as a hasty mana dork is pretty good too.
I also like the vibes here. What would you say are you picking up? What's does this remind you of anything from your your
Well,
past?
looking at the art,
Your
it
bedtime
looks like Red
stories?
Riding Hood, but it doesn't make any sense to me thematically because she's got a red coat on, but it doesn't make any sense with the other one.
Just give her like a red coat. It's going to be fine. Yeah, the official name, I guess, is Ruby and the Wolf. So
Well, I have not heard of Ruby and the Wolf.
I think we're going to do technically non-copyright alterations of, you know, this is the Strixhaven treatment for your Harry Potter. So yeah, Ruby and the Wolf, I think it's going to be a lot of like creatures, werewolves.
Oh yeah. Eldraine
Yeah,
had
obviously
wolves.
some like Red
Yeah.
Riding Hood inspiration here. Badass Riding Hood, that kind of works. They did like creepy goth Alice in Wonderland, and that was like popular with people. So.
Where was that? Was that the other original?
No, that wasn't in Magic. It was just
Oh.
like a thing that kind of existed in the world.
Yeah, I didn't love that. The Johnny Depp one.
There
right?
was definitely the Tim Burton one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tim Burton, Johnny Depp.
But yeah, all right. So Gruul's kind of doing its thing, but maybe it's starting small, getting bigger over time. Moving on, our next archetype is going to be white-black bargain and sacrifice. It's called Pale as Snow. First up, we have Shrouded Shepherd. It's a 2-mana spirit warrior for 2/2, and when Shrouded Shepherd enters the battlefield, target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Okay. So kind of a trick creature here. Doesn't have flash, but it can also go on an adventure and cleave the shadows for 1 and a black. Creatures your opponent control get -1/-1 until end of turn.
So this is still a little hard for me to evaluate without knowing the rest of the set. It's obviously an assertive card, I feel like, being that it rewards you for already having something else on the board to attack with. Otherwise, it doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
And the cleave shadows, I suppose there's a situation where you have, I don't know what the bodies are like on the board, but maybe using this as a finisher. Usually, I feel like this effect costs 3 mana, right? I feel like.
Yeah, it's cheap for the cost.
So maybe that's...
It's a sorcery speed, so that's a little bit of why, but I mean, it still works. You can go to attacks, have your opponent block, then cast it in main phase 2. So yeah, I agree with you that it's a little bit hard. I'm going to guess that this is a little bit underwhelming, and that it's going to work really well in very aggressive white decks where they want to have multiple things, just slamming multiple creatures a turn from turn 3 onward.
This could work well with the curses.
It also works well with going wide, but yeah, I think
the curse roll that makes things 1/1s.
Here's what I don't like about it. While I do think Cleave Shadows might end up being a pretty solid adventure to have in your deck, this itself doesn't give a roll. It doesn't create a second thing, and if this is bargain and sacrifice, I'm going to want to look for cards that make extra stuff. Things. You know what I mean? So Definitely. As a signpost, it kind of feels off the path. Let's take a look at our second signpost, Neva, Stalked by Nightmares. 2 for a white and a black, human noble, 2/2. She's got menace, and when Neva, Stalked by Nightmares, enters the battlefield, return target creature or enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. Whenever an enchantment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Neva, then scry 1.
Okay, so 4 mana to get a card back. And get a creature. That doesn't feel like a terrible rate necessarily to me. And the fact that she grows could be good, especially with the scry. So I'm going to say this is maybe okay.
So Menace makes it intriguing.
Yeah, it's tough that
I think it's the only thing that saves it, because coming in as a 2/2 for 4, it gets you an enchantment back. And that enchantment
or
creature. That enchantment could be a saga.
Yeah.
It could be a very value-focused thing. Now, here's the one caveat. Whenever an enchantment you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, is not capped. It can happen multiple times per turn.
Yep.
I could definitely see a situation where you have 2 or 3 creatures that are all rolled up, and you go to combat and you have 3 or 4 enchantments hit your graveyard in that exact turn, and she's a 5/5.
Yeah.
And you scried 3.
There could be a fun thing. I don't know if there's any instant cast things that put rolls down, but if you replace a roll on a creature and then the other one falls off, goes to the graveyard, it's another way to
that's interesting.
Do a little trick.
Yeah. So I could see it happening. Interesting to see whether or not the rest of the cards kind of enable this realistically or not.
Could be good in a control shell
sack.
is what I'm going to leave it open to.
So
I don't know what the fairy tale with that Abominable Snowman is really all I got from this guy and Shrouded Shepherd.
So I think it's supposed to be Snow White.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, they've got a rare. She has a cursed apple, and she's sitting there.
Oh, are there dwarves?
Very malicious. We had 7 dwarves.
Yeah, and the other set
last time.
Well, she needs her 7 dwarves.
Also, they were red, so I don't know if they're friends in this.
Yeah. Okay.
I think these are very loose
Okay. Sure.
Loose inspirations. So we'll find out more, but my guess is it's going to be dark magic and sacrificing, paying a dark cost in order to do something.
Bargaining.
Bargains. Yeah, you got it.
I guess she would work well with bargain too.
Yes, that is. Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So green-blue is the Kingdom of Storms. Ramp to 5+ mana and value spells.
Okay.
So yeah, the same old Simic non-archetype.
Play big spells.
Get there and play big spells. Tempest Heart is a 4 mana elemental elk 3/4 with trample. Whenever you cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater, put a +1/+1 counter on Tempest Heart. Not bad. It also has an adventure. You can pay 1 and a blue to scan the clouds. At instant speed, draw 2 cards, then discard 2 cards. Oh.
I would say that the instant side of that is more exciting to me.
Yeah. Draw 2, discard 2 feels a little bit costly, but this is an adventure. It's free.
Yeah.
A 4-mana 3/4 with trample that gets bigger. This feels like the kind of card that's going to be really annoying. Like 2 of them on the battlefield could get utterly out of hand.
Yeah, you do basically like you're playing a 5-mana spell, so you're not playing anything else that turn. Almost always.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
But you should be
it's what you want to be doing.
Hopefully you play this turn 4, and then turn 5 you play a 5 manas, and then you've got whatever your 5 mana thing is, and this at whatever. And I think like playing the first part on turn 2 is going to smooth out your curve for 3, and then you have your 4-drop in hand, and then hopefully you've also found a 5.
Yeah, so I think
this could be a really consistent.
It's sort of similar to Battles in that either half of the card being good justifies the other half.
Yeah.
And so while I agree with you, like I fully agree with your assessment, I think you'll just play this as a way to filter cards and get rid of extra lands or whatever.
I'm gonna
just
have
dig into your deck,
exiled on an adventure,
and then you have a little bit of extra value. You could play it later in the game if you need it. If you don't, maybe it just stays in exile.
It's an elemental elk. I like the art on this card.
Yeah, he's got like lightning shooting through his horns, and elks were of course like super overpowered because of Oko. So nice little nod to the history of Eldraine there. The next one is Troyan Gutsy Explorer. He's 1 green-blue. Legendary creature Vidalcan Scout 1/3. Tap to add green-blue. Spend this mana only to cast spells with mana value 5 or greater, or spells with X in their mana costs. Interesting. And then we've got blue, tap, draw a card, and discard a card. A 1/3 looter that can give you 2 extra mana if you're casting a 5-cost spell.
So hopefully you're playing this on turn 3, and then playing a 6-drop on turn 4.
That's gonna get so annoying.
Yeah, that's where you want to be. So maybe this is your turn 2. You do the filter thing from the heart. Turn 3, you do this. Turn 4, you maybe have picked up a 6-drop.
Interesting to look at. Are there payoffs for having cards in your graveyard, and how much recursion is there too? Because now this is 2 cards that put cards directly into your graveyard. So maybe there's a little bit of an animator thing that's possible in this category, especially because you've got cards that cost a lot anyway.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I'm imagining the Golgari probably has some sort of graveyard thing. And
Sultai
is always graveyard, so I'm betting whatever that wedge is, and I can see there's a little bit of interaction here between this and the teamer side of things, right? Whereas spells with more than 5 mana value are probably going to have 4 power or greater if they're creatures.
I think this seems powerful. Yeah. You're taking a turn off in terms of like the board because it's just a 1/3, but presumably the trade-off that you're making there is you obviously want to like get a payoff from it. Otherwise, this is trash.
Yeah. So I think that this already is looking to me like I'm wanting some way to extend the game. I want to get some cards back from the graveyard that I'm going to be throwing away that I can't play at the time.
And then give a lot of things monster. Yeah. Monster roll.
Monstrous.
So you were just talking about Golgari, and what do you know? Here it is. The archetype is the story of Greta the Witch Hunter, and it's mid-range food. So probably a lot of sacrifice. Yes, yeah, it's Hansel and Gretel.
I have no idea what the blue Simics fairy tale was.
Oh, that's a good point. I was supposed to quiz you. Yeah, it was like Island of Storms. I think they just don't. Oh, you know what it is?
Yeah.
I think we get a little hint in the art of that last guy. It's like Jack and the Beanstalk. Oh, he's climbing a beanstalk and he's like stealing a magical bean or something.
Okay.
And that kind of
5 cost.
That makes sense. Like ramp, grow really big, and then pay off with stolen goods.
Yeah, I see. Oh, the inspiration.
And apparently Blue's kind of sub theme is stealing stuff. So,
perfect.
Yeah. All right. So Golgari, let's see how they fit together. Gingerbread Hunter, 4 and a green for a giant 5/5. When Gingerbread Hunter enters the battlefield, create a food token. And then he's also an adventure, 2 black for puny snack. At instant speed, target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn.
This looks underwhelming to me.
Yeah, there's
It's
nothing
almost
crazy
just like
about
a bear, and then the adventure is we had I think there was a card in the last set that was 1 black for the same effect. So definitely pretty overcosted on the adventure. Golem's Bite was that and then some.
Yes, Golem's Bite was that and then some. Here's what I'll say for the card. It's boring, but it's going to be good.
I mean, coming up the board with 5/5s is...
Yeah, every
is good.
set has that like 5 or 6 mana green creature that gains you 3 life, and
Yeah.
that's what this is. But it's a little bit overcosted,
Honey
and it
Mammoth.
also has the bonus of killing something
Maybe.
cheap conditionally. Maybe you like find a way to use it. It is instant speed, so that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
I wouldn't pick this very highly. Like I wouldn't start out there, but it's really three things on one card.
Yeah, the value of this is going to come down to just how big the rest of the bodies are. You know, if 5/5 is kind of the tipping point.
I foresee this sticking around and wheeling late in packs, and if you're in this color pair, I think you're going to be really happy. One thing we should start talking about is like, would you consider playing this card for the off color ones? Would you consider playing it if you could only cast one or the other side? And I think for this one, like maybe, but like don't pick it highly, right? Like
This
5
would
and a
be
food
a 23rd
for a
card
5/5
in a deck
Yeah.
that's not both colors.
See, okay, I disagree. I think I'm gonna play as many as I can draft, but I just don't think I'm gonna draft that many because there's gonna be better targets.
I'm going to speculate and say that this is probably going to be a 2 colors and a splash sort of format.
Yes.
And that you're going to have, maybe you put this Gingerbread Hunter deck into your Simic deck, and then you have like a swamp. And then sometimes you're able to hit these black effects, but you're happy to play this 5-cost card. For
Sure.
the extra value
Sure.
you get from the other stuff.
Yeah, aggro willing. I think every deck is going to want to be able to play 1 or 2 off color
Yeah.
things that they happen to snag. So yeah, I totally agree with you. Moving on, we've got Greta Sweet Tooth Scourge. 1 black green for a legendary creature, Human Warrior 3/3. When Greta Sawtooth Scourge enters the battlefield, create a food token. Pay green to sacrifice a food. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Activate only as a sorcery. Pay white and a black, sacrifice a food, you draw a card, and you lose a life. Okay.
I think she's solid.
Yeah, that's a
3/3
lot
for
of good
3
stuff.
Is good to begin with.
A 3/3 for 3 that gives you a food
Yeah.
is great.
And then she
At
has the
uncommon,
ability
you
to
can have a
replace
couple.
herself for 2 more. So you can choose to either spend that food, like you get a food immediately, and then you have the ability to choose whether you want to draw a card for 2 or get 3 life, which is pretty nice. Or make her into a 4/4.
Presumably, you're going to have food floating around, so maybe she lets you draw a couple cards. Having the ability to gain life or lose a little life and draw a card is pretty cool. I foresee the put a +1/+1 counter on something, one being used less.
Mm-hmm.
You probably need to
It sucks
know
it's
that you're going to win the
sorcery
game
speed.
to do that, right?
Yeah.
Because
If it
like,
were instant speed, it would be very good.
yeah. Then again, there are people that play like that where they drop like a 2-drop or something, and then they just will sacrifice every food for the rest of the game, you know, and make that thing into like a 5/5 and try and kill you in a couple turns. From Mushroom Watchdogs
Yeah.
in the last set, that's going to be effective sometimes.
You
You
just
know,
gotta
just
have
don't
removal
go
in
too
hand.
hard on one creature, like
Yeah.
ever. So, yeah, I
Diversify
think
your
Greta's
threats.
really good.
Yeah, I think Greta is probably the strongest of these signposts we've seen.
And
Just single most valuable.
yeah,
Replaces itself.
I wouldn't be surprised though if like they kind of went light on food. Like food might be a little underwhelming this time. Just
Since we just had so much of it. We're all
well,
stuffed.
that and like food was very good. I think there was like a lot of broken stuff that you could do, not necessarily in draft, but in standard with some of the like food synergies. So they might not be quite as plentiful or giving this time.
We'll
with
have to
food.
see.
We will have to see. So next up, we've got blue white, and it's the story of the Frost Queen.
Oh, this is Frozen.
Yeah, it's Lorcana Frozen.
Yeah, this is the Frozen fairy tale.
It's all about tapping them creatures.
We get some more stun effects.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be fairies.
Oh, so this
and,
is-
like tempo play.
Azorius.
Threadbind Click, 3 blue for a fairy 3/3 with flyer. 4 mana for 3/3s, not too bad. It also goes on adventures. For 2 and a white, you can rip the seams. At instant speed, destroy target tapped creature. Oh, man. I'm into this.
I think this card's good. It's 2 effects that are like kind of format staples at their regular cost. So this is just 2 cards for 1.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. Destroy target tapped creature is usually like one of those subpar removal spells.
But if you're getting a 3/3 flyer with it also, I'm playing this. This is a great.
And I was going to say, like, 3/3 for 4 flyer is another card that we see a lot that is not undervalued. I think people assess it accurately.
A lot of
it
the times
does
it's
a lot of
3/4
damage,
for
but it's a
5.
little
Yeah.
expensive. But you're right. A 3/4 for 5
I'd
is
rather have it
something you
as a
play.
3/3 for 4.
I would too, and with the addition of that instant, it's just going to make such a nice curve, you know?
Yeah.
So, Threadbind Click, yeah, all in on that. Next up, we've got Charade of Numbing Depths. 2 white, blue, legendary creature Merfolk Wizard. She's a 2/3. And when Charade of Numbing Depths enters the battlefield, tap target creature an opponent controls and put a stun counter on it. If you tap 1 or more untapped creatures your opponents control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Nice.
Yeah, okay, so enters the battlefield, tap target creature, put a counter on it, and then you draw a card. So this is I think, pretty good. 4 mana to stun your opponent's creature, draw a card, and put a body on the field.
Yeah,
Even
so
if it's a little bit weak itself.
Exactly, because you're going to be... It's a tempo game, so you're going to want to curve out, and a 2/3 is actually reasonable. That can block okay. I think the value that you get from it, even if you don't get to draw an extra card, is in the range where you would consider playing it, and it would kind of depend, like, how aggressive are you. If you can trigger it to draw cards and you know you're going to be tapping your opponent down, I think this starts to be like, you probably want to draw a card off it at least, right?
Yeah, I mean, like, assuming the only place that this is going to be bad is when you're already your opponent's already on the beatdown and all their creatures are tapped. So
Yeah.
you can't. They've already attacked you. So hopefully they've played something that you can stun.
Yeah, and then
you
the
can
stun
draw.
counters defensively, they buy you a tiny bit of time, but it's not as good as bouncing a creature.
Yeah.
Makes them like use the mana again. So yeah, good point. You want to be on the attack for this card to be effective, but when you I think it'll be good.
Yeah, I think most of the time though, this
Annoying.
is going to be 2/3, draws a card, stuns an opponent's creature.
This is the kind of thing you really want to just.
Yeah.
Oh, you think you stabilized? Well, I get 1 more turn of 6 more damage in the air.
I think
I'm into
the
it.
signposts for Simic have been the most like slotted together.
Yes.
Whereas
Synergistic.
Yeah. For a tempo deck, these are like kind of maybe the top end of your deck.
Yeah, but here's the thing. The 2 mana Lord from Lord of the Rings, that's like when you draw your second card, make a 1/1.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good card,
Yeah.
but at 2 mana, if it's your only 2-drop, a lot of times you play it and it just gets killed because they have the ammo in their hand and they don't want you to like get value off of it.
Yeah.
So in a weird way, having this effect on my curved topper might be better. Like
Yeah.
you can play the 2-drop that gives something +2/+2 from white black if you want. Play a couple of those and start just kind of getting in there for a little extra damage, and then you come in and mess up their plans.
Blue black Dimir.
Enchanting Slumber. I think this
Has got to be Sleeping Beauty.
Sleeping Beauty, I think. Yeah. And it's fairy typal and control. That's what it says, fairy typal. So first up, Spellscorn Coven. 3 black fairy warlock, 2/3 flyer. When Spellscorn Coven enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. Okay. It also has an adventure. It says, take it back. 2 and a blue. Instant return target spell to its owner's hand. Ah. Okay.
And it looks like they've got a piece of the mirror in their hand.
Yeah. They're like bouncing some energy. That's pretty cool. I like this card. This seems like a nice little control card.
Yeah, this seems pretty solid. That's definitely a tempo play.
It's interesting. These things are obviously like kind of conditional, but I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out that having one of them in your hand ends up allowing you to like disrupt really crucial play patterns for like celebration decks or roll decks where like they really want to play that specific creature, maybe they even like go to attack and they're planning to flash something in or something like that, and you're like, nope, I'm gonna eat your creature, and so it might enable some like goofball stuff.
Counter magic is usually strong.
4 mana for a 2/3 flyer is a little expensive, even if it makes them discard a card, but like a mind rot effect on a creature is,
I think that's usually pretty good. Yeah. I like this. I mean, it's keeping you at parity for card advantage or even ahead, right? You know, because they're discarding, you're getting board development, and have presumably also maybe played your adventure spell. So like you return that card to their hand, and then you play this guy, and they have to discard it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually a great way to play it.
So there's a little bit of like a rattlesnake effect here, where it's like, I've played this thing.
Oh, you thought you were going to play your bomb?
Or I'm going to just make you discard it.
Got to throw it out. I'm so sorry. Yeah, that's going to be really fun. Next, we've got Obira, Dreaming Duelist. She's a white-black legendary fairy warrior, 2/2. Both of these fairies, importantly. She's got flash, flying, and whenever another fairy enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent loses 1 life. Love it.
Yeah, I would play a 2/2 for 2 with flash and flying.
Already?
Yeah, I mean, like, it doesn't need that last piece of text there. I don't know how good that'll be, but it could be good if there's a lot of fairy token generation, which
they said this was like fairy tribal.
Yeah,
so Typal, excuse me. So both of those, like I said, were fairies. I think
they're going to run out of namespace soon for these creatures.
Yeah.
There's only so many little different combinations of consonants and vowels. What's her flavor text down there?
She says, Obira sleepwalks through the wilds, hunting for worthy opponents. Okay, so she's asleep.
Yeah. Time to wake up, Dreaming Duelist.
Time to wake up. I like it. I like control decks. I'm into it.
I am feeling good about Sultai.
Yeah.
Sultai is where I've seen the most exciting cards so far, but we haven't really gotten to the aggressive block of cards yet.
Nah, here they come. Leading the pack, Red-White has Brawl at the Grand Ball as its theme.
Okay.
And it's aggro and celebration. So we're going to be
Red-White
coming in hot. And
we got a recruiter.
First up, Imodane's Recruiter is leading the pack. 2 in a red, Human Knight, 2/2. When Imodane's Recruiter enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain haste until end of turn. It's pretty solid. He's got a very expensive adventure. Train Troops is 4 and a white. For a sorcery, create 2/2/2 white knight creature tokens with vigilance.
So I think the plan is here, like, you somehow you draw him late, play the 5 sorcery, put down the 2/2s, and then you can play him and swing for 9.
So it's taking that like 3-drop undercosted creature that boosts other creatures and saying here's something to do with it when you draw it later.
Yeah.
And you don't actually have great attacks. It's interesting because it's like in Kamigawa we had the sorcery that made 3 2/2 vigilant samurais for 6.
But that thing also scryed 3, which was really the
scry part. 3 was huge because you usually found another one and you could go right into it. So that's actually a really good point. This is only 1 mana less and it only makes 2.
And doesn't scry, so it's definitely worse.
It's definitely like setting you up to go wide, but it does trigger celebration immediately because it makes 2 things instantly. It's a little unfortunate that like casting it as a creature doesn't.
There's a lot of situations where I think this card will be good.
For sure.
Ash.
Second up is Ash Party Crasher. She's white and red for a legendary creature, human peasant. Haste 2/2. She has celebration whenever Ash Party Crasher attacks. If 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield under your control this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Ash.
The turn you play her, she's probably not getting that effect.
Right.
But maybe you're playing a 1 and a 2-drop or something like that.
I don't know. I mean, yeah, it's fine. Like, we'll just have to see how often celebration can go off.
Yeah. This is a 2/2 for 2 without flying and not without flash. I'm less excited about than the Dimir one.
Yeah, I'll play it, but probably won't go way out of my way.
Mm-hmm. And since it's legendary, also, you can only have the one of them, too.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. You can't run multiples.
It's not Mushroom Watchdog.
Being a true legendary or a true signpost also means that it's probably not going to be fought over as much.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if people are really splashing a card like this. That seems crazy. I'm not sure how much like, I'm maybe least excited about celebration. It seems like it's going to be
Seems like you got to
like
do the most
moments,
work to get the value out of it.
Yeah, it's going to depend how many cards do Celebration on their own, because double spelling is powerful, but I don't know. It's hard to keep up for more than a couple turns.
Yeah.
Green-white is Armont and the Beasts, rolls and creature enchantments. So pretty loose on theme here, it seems. First up, it's Woodland Acolyte, 2 and a white, human cleric, 2/2. When Woodland Acolyte enters the battlefield, draw a card. It also goes on an adventure for 1 green instant. Put target permanent card from your graveyard on top of your library.
I think this is pretty solid.
Yeah.
Kind of like if you have a good card in your graveyard, a way to get it back, or just the 2/2 that replaces itself for 3 is playable.
I made the wrong noise. This is good. This is very good. Like a 3-mana 2/2 that draws you a card.
Yeah.
It's good. That's just good.
What was a Generous Stray was a kind of recent version of this cost?
Yeah, the Argent something or other in Lord of the Rings. I feel like
there's like
every
usually
set
a 3 is you can get a body with a card draw.
Either has a 2-mana 1/1 that draws you a card, or a 3-mana 2/2 that draws you a card. And they're pretty sought after. I like that you can put target permanent card from your graveyard on top of your library. So if you're in a situation where it makes sense, I guess you could have 2 of them and
just loop them.
Yeah. It doesn't seem like the worst thing in the world, because you're still drawing an extra card, so you're going up cards.
Yeah.
By doing that. And this is the kind of thing you want in multiples. I also think that everybody who's even touching white is going to take it, just because a 3-mana 2/2 that draws you a card is good. So that's the balancing factor. It's probably going to be hard to have multiples.
This card will be playable even for just the white side, I think.
Yes. Agreed. The green side only, not so much. Yeah, probably not.
It doesn't do anything at 1 mana.
Nah. Sir Armont the Redeemer's up next. 3 green white legendary creature, human knight. He's a 4/4. When Sir Armont the Redeemer enters the battlefield, create a monster roll token attached to another target creature you control. Monster is the +1/+1 in trample, and enchanted creatures you control get +1/+1. So this is our first roll on a creature.
Yeah, so this will trigger Celebration.
Yes.
Which is good to mention. If you have another creature, it's 6 stats for 5 mana, which is good.
Yeah.
Presumably,
it also turns all rolls into +2.
Yeah, which is also good. So I think this guy is pretty solid as just a rock card, but he does require that you have done some work outside of this card to get any value out of it.
Right? Yeah, right. It's going to put you really in that like synergy place where you're going to be the rolls deck, right?
You need to have just other permanents to attach rolls to, or you're in trouble.
Yeah. Now that being said, a whole set that sells itself as being based on enchantments makes me think that there's probably a fair number of ways to do this. So I'm actually like intrigued, and I could imagine a situation where it powers up 3 or 4 creatures potentially.
For sure.
That's a good. Okay, let's pause for a second. How many rolls do you think, without even really looking at the cards, like just based on how Magic kind of goes, my guess is you're probably not going to have more than like 2 rolls at a time.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I really think I'm going to have any rolls at all is if they're stapled onto like an ETB effect or like another effect.
A creature or something.
Yeah, so it really depends on how many cards have play this card and do its effect, and then also put a roll onto something.
If you're playing Sir Armont, are you going to go out of your way to play slightly overcosted creatures that have rolls because do you believe in this strategy of kind of getting free bonuses for the rolls?
I think the thing that is most important to me is just having more creatures. Like this is a wide deck.
That makes perfect sense.
I want to make sure I have something to play that added effect on too.
I like the idea of, again, thinking about multiple colors, building yourself an out where if you're going to go into rolls and try and like go wide Voltron, I guess, you have a way to like sack rolls for damage or something as like another way to win. You don't, because you'll probably get stopped at some point. If you're spending money on things like auras, you're not spending money on stats for creatures, and that's just kind of something you have to keep in mind.
I think also could work really well with the Gruul cards that we've seen so far.
That's
so maybe it's like Gruul splashing this card would be pretty safe.
That's a good point.
Especially
a good way to
since
get your creatures
1
over
mana
4.
at 5 is not too bad.
And Gruul is probably going to it's going to like monster. It's going to like bonuses. That's a good point. I'm curious now, like how aggressive the set is going to end up being and whether or not we're going to be allowed to do all this stuff.
Ooh.
All right, next up.
Wait. What's Fairy Tale? Where are we at?
man, if you can guess.
Sir Armont. Okay, so we got a knight in shining armor.
Yeah, of course. It was called Armont and the Beasts. So I'm not sure if that's like
Beauty
a specific.
and the Beast? No,
maybe
that was Love Struck Beast.
Yeah, that was Love Struck Beast. I think this is more just like, I don't know, outcast knight who like becomes one with the wolves and then comes back for dinner.
Okay, yeah, we all love that classic.
Kind of random. Maybe I saw one website guess like Rapunzel or something, like there's a Trapped in the Tower kind of vibe to it, but it's sure not coming through in those cards.
No.
All right, well,
Red.
we'll have to figure out
Red
as
blue.
we play. Next up is it the Magician's Misstep? Instants, sorceries, and adventures.
Oh, I'm excited for that.
Yeah, this seems like the place for that to thrive. First up, we've got Johann, Apprentice Sorcerer, 2 and a blue-red for a 2/5 human wizard. You may look at the top card of your library anytime. Once each turn, you may cast an instant or sorcery from the top of your library. Good late-game card.
Yeah.
I like the stats.
So I think that this card is maybe pretty solid, especially since you could I think it's going to be too expensive to maybe do that, but it depends on how many cheap adventures there are that are instant speed. Because if you're able to play an instant on your turn that's an adventure and send that card on an adventure, and then on your opponent's turn you happen to top deck another adventure that's an instant that you can still play, you get to put that, and it kind of draws you cards, which is obviously really what you want to be doing in an Is It deck a lot of the time.
Right, and if you've got instant and sorceries as your theme already, it makes sense that you're going to want to like prioritize adventure creatures as much as you can because you're getting a little bit of both.
Yeah.
So I see it's possible that you could be playing an extra spell every turn or almost every turn with Johann if you're building your deck right.
I think this guy's definitely maybe going to require the most strategic construction. It really depends on the numbers, but I like this card. I would be excited to play with this card.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be interesting to see what he enables. His buddy here, Frolicking Familiar, is 2 and a blue for an otter wizard. He's a flying 2/2. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Frolicking Familiar gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Pretty nice for that to be on a flying creature.
Yeah, and then the adventure side here is deal 1 damage to any target for 1 red. So I
Blow
think
off some steam.
this is kind of exactly the kind of card I was just describing, where like,
Yeah.
worst case scenario is on your opponent's turn, you don't have a target for this, you hit them in the face just so that you can draw this also. And that's a pretty sweet place to be in, or maybe you are able to get a trade out of this somehow.
Gosh, that's a good point. When you do that, it's like drawing 2 cards, sort of. Even if those cards aren't the most premium, you get blow off steam, and then you also get the creature on your turn in exile. So I could see doing that.
And
I can also see
still at your upkeep.
Yeah, and I could see having this on your opponent's turn because it's once per turn. So you could play the instant speed side, after combat in your opponent's turn or something, and leave yourself, okay, I'm gonna go a little slow. So this is interesting. Also, just great art. It's got Lutri vibes.
Yeah,
I love Lutri. So I love Lutri. I like Frolicking Familiar. I don't know how great it's gonna end up being. Like, this deck is obviously like play a sorcery every turn, bud. Like,
I think that the upside on that creature is really high. The first signpost we saw. So he's got a pretty high ceiling for what he could do for your deck.
Yeah, agreed. I think the secret power of him is exactly what you said, that he can draw you creature spells.
Up to 2 a turn, potentially.
Yeah, that's going to be quite good.
I think there's probably going to be some really funny things that people do with maybe top deck manipulation. Imagine, so we just looked at that green one that puts a card on top. Mm-hmm. You put some sort of other instant on top with that, Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
We're thinking.
I hope it goes a little slow so we can do stuff like that. That sounds great. All right, next up is our final pair. It's red-black.
Let me guess, it's Sacrifice?
Rat tokens and aggro, actually.
Whoa, okay.
They just switched it up on you.
Wow.
They put Sacrifice in white-black.
It's just been 4 sets of black-red Sacrifice.
Only 4? I
Yeah.
think it might be more. No, I know. It's the Dark Piper. So it seems like a Pied Piper ratty vibe.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Love it. First up, we've got Callous Sellsword, who is neither a Piper or a rat. He's a white-black human soldier 2/2. But Callous Sellsword enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter for each other creature that died under your control this turn. Okay, that's interesting. He's also got an adventure. 1 red burned together is a sorcery that target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to any other target, then sacrifice it. Yo.
Okay, so I'll say I like this card in how the halves interact with each other.
Yes.
It gives you a sack outlet so that, I mean, you, in a best case scenario, use this to remove a creature on their side and get a 3/3. So this reminds me a little bit of like a murderous chupacabra. I do have to point out also that this is a sacrifice themed card.
Yeah. A little bit. It's got some vibes. It pays you off for death.
And it's got sacrifice as a keyword on on the adventure. I actually am going to rate this maybe an A+, because I think it's the cheapest fling effect we've ever had printed now that I'm looking at it again, because it's target creature you control.
Any other target.
Yeah, so it's face, too.
Yeah.
So I think that's actually really good.
That's right. So it's like if you don't care as much, you can have him be a 3/3, but you can just hit him in the face for 5.
Yeah, fling is usually a 2-cost effect, so that's undercosted.
Okay, so you're like, this is your secret A.
Mm-hmm.
Your mythic uncommon. Okay, interesting. Callous Sellsword. The last card that we're going to look at is Totentance, Swarm Piper. 1 black-red for a legendary human warlock bard. He's a 2/3, and whenever Totentance or another non-token creature you control dies, create a 1/1 black rat creature token with this creature can't block. 1 in a black, target attacking rat you control gains Death Touch until end of turn. Okay. It's still works with sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
That seems pretty strong. For 3 mana, you get to turn all of your creatures into rats that can't block. If you're going aggro, and then you get to give them Death Touch for 2 mana, that seems pretty good. They just can't block.
This is fine. Yeah, so it's kind of like a... Well, yeah, the fact that they can't block kind of makes this a lot worse.
It makes the Death Touch kind of random.
Yeah, it's like, well, I guess I can hit you for 1 and 2 mana.
Yeah.
But at the bottom line is this guy is a 2/3 for 3 that I want to say he sticks around, but he doesn't really.
Why do you say that?
He can't block, which is like what the big thing you want with any of these like Doom Dissenter or sort of cards. They're sticky, but they don't leave you chumps later on.
Yeah, I'll say 2/3 is like, it's better than 3/2, obviously, right? Like much better than 3/2, and it will hold off like some stuff. It attacks okay, I guess, as well. And whenever it dies, it still makes another rat. So at minimum, you've got a 3 mana 2/3 that makes a 1/1 afterwards.
Also, it sucks that he can't give himself Death Touch.
It does suck that he can't give himself Death Touch.
Because until he died, I mean, like he basically doesn't have that bottom line of text at all until another non-token creature on your side of the board dies.
Yeah. Now, if you believe the conspiracy that this is actually Rakdos Sack again, then I think it starts being pretty good.
Sure, yeah.
Because that's a lot of free bodies.
Yeah, I mean, it probably is Rakdos Sacrifice again, along with whatever the other color that's going to benefit from it, whether that's a little bit of white splash or green splash.
And remember, Bargain. Bargain has some synergy with black.
Yeah.
Bargain can only be triggered by an artifact, an enchantment, or a token. So the fact that they're rat tokens, it's a good way to pay your bargain costs. It obviously could potentially work well with fight spells. You give a rat Death Touch and then fight something.
Yeah.
So
with all those fight spells we have in green or red black, but you could give a rat Death Touch and then have it deal the fling damage to anything and kill it.
I've been like wildly defending this guy. I think you're right. I think it's going to be a little underwhelming.
He just got a lot. You got a lot of work to do to make this guy work. So I mean, maybe there are situations where this card is absolutely incredible, but on his own, he just doesn't quite do enough for me.
It's really random that the rats get Death Touch, but they can't block. It's like you really have to go out of your way to make that do anything.
Yeah,
unless you're really like putting them in a position where they have to block a 1/1 with their 3/3 or something like that and make it really annoying. But you're dominating that game in that case.
Yeah, you got to be pretty far ahead.
Also, you have a 1/1, they have a 3/3. Why aren't they attacking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a 2/3 at best.
Yeah. People see this thing and they're just gonna be like, "Cool, I'm gonna attack you every turn with everything I have."
This reminds me
Good
of
luck.
the Charbelcher, or not Charbelcher, the goblin thing that spits out tokens from March of the Machines, the red-black card artifact guy. You know? Oil counter, Phyrexian, I don't know.
Which one specifically? There were so many.
The one that was 3 mana, one.
The artifact that made a bigger one every turn? That thing was crazy. Okay.
There was like a signpost in Rakdos for a sacrifice that kind of was like make a token.
It's making me think of the red-black orc captains from Lord of the Rings that both read pretty good, but just like
never really came together.
They just didn't do their thing very often.
Yeah,
for what they were. Great. So that's the signposts. Sounds like you're into like Golgari and Sultai?
Yeah.
Is that what you want?
I think so. That's
Cool.
where I'm going to start out.
Yeah, dig into some food.
I do think the other Rakdos signpost is pretty sweet though. The one with the fling.
Oh yeah, that is pretty sweet. I like that idea. I like going for that. I'm gonna try and make Is It Good.
Oh, I also think the Is It card
start.
was good. I mean, I could see Grixis
intriguing.
being pretty fun.
Oh, I'm gonna predict right now that my first deck that I build though is gonna be a blue-white tempo deck.
Okay. I will predict that I will draft whatever my rare is and
Nice.
follow that into the ground.
Love it. Well, we're excited to dig into Eldraine. Curious to hear what you guys are thinking and how your pre-releases go. Anything else we want to talk about? This was a long one.
I think I'm good then. Let's cut it there.
Cool.
So let's sign off.
Absolutely.
Hey.
Well, until next time.
Good night.
Fight hard.
Strong heart, clear eyes, can't lose.
Yeah. That was cool. That's our thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good night.